He was just fixing her computer. She was a billionaire who never let anyone close. One accidental photo sparked a question that changed everything. Do you think I'm pretty?
Liam Brooks always felt out of place on the top floor of Carter Global, where the air seemed quieter, the walls shinier, and the people somehow walked faster without making a sound. As an IT technician and a single dad who spent most mornings scrambling to pack school lunches or wiping peanut butter off counters, he never imagined he'd have a reason to stand where executives made million-dollar decisions on a Tuesday afternoon. But when the CEO's assistant called and reported that Ava Carter's computer had crashed during 2 investor meetings, he knew he had to go immediately. Ignoring the request wasn't an option. The elevator ride felt too long and too bright, giving him too much time to think about Mia, who was home sick on the couch with a mild fever and a stack of coloring books. He hated leaving her when she wasn't feeling well, but his neighbor insisted she'd check in throughout the day. Still, guilt clung to him like a heavy jacket. When the elevator doors opened, he stepped onto a hallway lined with black glass walls that reflected his own nervous expression back at him. He adjusted his worn laptop bag and followed the assistant's directions to the CEO's office, trying to breathe normally, trying not to imagine worst-case scenarios of him accidentally deleting some billion-dollar file. Ava Carter's office door was open when he arrived, but she wasn't inside. The room surprised him. Instead of the intimidating space he expected, the walls were warm with soft lighting and understated artwork, and floor-to-ceiling windows washed everything in natural light. Her desk was sleek and organized, with only a laptop, a notebook, and a small potted plant that looked far too delicate to match the CEO's reputation. Liam moved toward the desk and powered on her computer, ready to run the usual diagnostics. After a few minutes, the machine flickered to life, then blinked, and a thumbnail preview popped onto the screen. He didn't mean to look at it. It appeared faster than he could turn his eyes away. The photo was of a woman sitting near a lake under bright sunlight. She wasn't posing. She wasn't polished like the magazine profiles he'd seen of Ava. She looked natural, thoughtful, almost peaceful. The system shut down again before he could process it, leaving him blinking at the blank screen with the faint impression of her expression still warm in his mind. He didn't have time to breathe before he heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned, startled, as Ava Carter walked in with a tablet in one hand and the kind of posture that reminded him why everyone on the lower floors spoke her name like a warning. She was calm, collected, and had that quiet presence that made everyone else straighten their backs. Her eyes landed on him, then the computer, and then the paused, uncertain look on his face. "Is everything working?" she asked, her voice smooth but carrying an undertone of expectation. Liam swallowed, trying to gather his thoughts as he forced his attention back to the keyboard. Still checking, the system restarted itself again. She stepped closer, setting her tablet on the desk. "This has been happening all week. Investors don't appreciate being disconnected mid-presentation." He nodded quickly. "I'll make sure it stops." Ava studied him for a moment longer, her gaze sharper than he expected. She didn't look irritated, she looked curious. Liam hoped she hadn't noticed how thrown off he had been by that accidental glimpse of her photo. He focused on the diagnostics window, trying to act like a man who definitely didn't see something he shouldn't have. But her eyes narrowed slightly, as if she sensed something. "Is there a problem?" she asked. The question wasn't harsh, it was perceptive. Liam felt heat rise in his neck. No problem," he said too fast. She raised a brow. "You're sure?" His silence betrayed him, and he knew it. Ava shifted her weight, crossing her arms lightly. "You looked surprised when I walked in." He opened his mouth, searching for a professional explanation that didn't make him sound like someone creeping through her personal files. His brain, unhelpful as ever, offered nothing. Before he could come up with an excuse, she asked in a steady tone that stopped him cold, "What did you see?" And just like that, the tension in the room changed. He suddenly felt very aware that he was standing in front of the most powerful person in the company, holding the kind of secret he never meant to see. He took a breath, wishing he could rewind the last 5 minutes. This wasn't how he expected his day to go. Not even close.
Ava didn't move from her place beside the desk as Liam struggled to find words, and the longer the silence stretched, the more he felt like the floor might open and drop him straight through 20 stories of glass and concrete. She didn't look angry, which somehow made it worse. She looked focused, almost patient, like she was waiting for him to decide whether he would tell the truth or scramble for a lie. He cleared his throat and tried to steady himself. "It was just a quick pop-up from your photo library," he said, speaking slowly so he didn't stumble. "I didn't mean to, it was only there for a second." Her expression didn't change, but she stepped closer, her attention locked on him in a way that made his shoulders tense. "You saw the picture by the lake." It wasn't a question. It was a statement from someone who didn't miss details. Liam nodded once, bracing for some version of an executive reprimand, a warning, maybe even security walking him out. Instead, Ava paused, folded her arms, and asked something he never would have expected from someone with her polished, controlled image. "What did you think of it?" The question caught him off guard so hard that he blinked twice before he could respond. "Think of it?" he echoed, unsure if this was a trap or a genuine inquiry. She tilted her head slightly, measuring his reaction. "Yes, you had a look on your face when I walked in. You saw it, and it meant something to you. What was it?" His instinct was to retreat behind professionalism, but the way she watched him, steady, calm, almost searching, made it clear she wasn't interested in a canned answer. Liam exhaled. "It wasn't anything bad. I just didn't expect to see you like that." Her brow lifted. "Like what?" He hesitated, knowing this was already beyond any IT appointment he'd ever handled. "You looked peaceful," he said quietly, "and a lot softer than the version people talk about around here." She didn't react right away. Her eyes lowered slightly and she leaned back against the desk, as if the words hit somewhere she didn't often let things land. For a moment, she didn't speak. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, just unusually honest. Then she asked almost under her breath, "Do you think I'm pretty?" Liam felt his heart skip. The question was so unexpected that he wondered if he misheard her. Ava Carter, Billionaire CEO, the woman who intimidated entire conference rooms, was asking her IT technician if he thought she was pretty? He didn't know how to answer without stepping into dangerous territory. But she wasn't smirking or teasing. She wasn't fishing for flattery. She looked strangely serious, maybe even vulnerable, and that unsettled him more than any stern tone ever could. He spoke carefully. "I think the photo showed a side of you people don't get to see." Her eyes lifted to his. He continued, "And yes, you looked pretty. But it was more than that. You looked human, like someone who wasn't carrying the weight of this whole building for once." Ava inhaled slowly, almost like she hadn't expected honesty. Not real honesty. She turned toward the window, staring at the skyline for a few seconds, before speaking again. "That picture was taken 2 years ago by my sister. It was the last time I went anywhere without bringing half a company with me." Liam wasn't sure what to say to that. He watched her shoulders rise and fall in a quiet breath. "People see me as a machine. Efficient, precise, untouchable." She glanced at him over her shoulder. "I don't think they'd believe that photo was me." Liam rested his hand on the back of the office chair, grounding himself. "Maybe that's the problem. Everyone sees the version of you that fits their expectations. Doesn't mean it's the whole picture." Ava turned fully toward him now, her expression unreadable but no longer cold. She talked differently than most people here. "You're not afraid to say something real." I shrugged lightly. "I don't have the energy to be anything else. Single parenting burns that out of you pretty fast." Her eyes softened with something close to curiosity. "You have a daughter?" I nodded. "Mia, 8. She's homesick today." The corner of her mouth lifted almost imperceptibly. "Must be hard to do it all alone." "It can be, but she's the best part of my life." Ava watched him with an expression he couldn't place. Something warm, thoughtful, maybe even envious. It lingered long enough that he felt the shift in the air between them.
She straightened slightly, the moment folding back into the quiet of the office. "Thank you for being honest," she said. "Most people can't manage that when they're standing in front of me." Liam didn't know how to respond, so he nodded and returned to the computer, but the atmosphere of the room had changed completely. This wasn't just a tech fix anymore. Something else had taken root, something he didn't think either of them meant to open.
Ava didn't speak for a while after that, and the quiet in her office felt different than before. It wasn't tense or intimidating. It felt like the moment after someone opens a door they never meant to unlock, when they're deciding whether to close it again or let someone step closer. Liam stayed focused on the computer, pretending he wasn't hyper-aware of her presence behind him. The only sound was the faint hum of the building's air system and the clicking of his keyboard. Finally, she walked toward the window, arms folded loosely across her chest. "That photo you saw," she said, her voice lower now, almost thoughtful, "was taken during a weekend trip I took with my sister. It was the first time I'd taken a break in almost a year." She paused, and he could hear her exhale softly. "I'd told myself I'd make trips like that more often. I never did." Liam straightened and turned slightly so he could see her reflection in the glass. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking past the city, where the clouds drifted above distant rooftops. "Running a company like this, it becomes your entire identity before you even realize it's happening," she said. "People expect you to be this unstoppable version of yourself, so you just keep delivering it." She let out a small, humorless laugh. "Eventually, that becomes the only version anyone believes." Liam didn't interrupt. He sensed she didn't get many chances to talk like this. He knew enough about stress, responsibility, and pressure to understand that even powerful people could feel trapped inside the lives they built. "I get it, in a different way," he said quietly. "When Mia was born, I took on everything: work, daycare, diapers, late-night fevers. I kept telling myself I could handle it all, that I didn't need help. I rubbed the back of my neck. Sometimes I wonder if I got so used to holding everything together that I forgot how to put anything down." Ava turned her head slightly, finally glancing at him over her shoulder. Her expression wasn't pity. It was recognition. "That sounds familiar," she said. For a moment she looked almost relieved that someone else understood the feeling of being stretched thin without admitting it out loud. She walked back toward her desk, her steps slower now, like she wasn't in CEO mode anymore. "Your daughter," she said, leaning lightly on the edge of the desk. "What's she like?" The question surprised him, not because it was personal, but because she genuinely seemed to care. "She's a firecracker," I said, unable to stop the small smile that formed. "Smart, too curious for her own good, and she talks non-stop. I mean non-stop." Ava's lips curved in a faint smile. "Sounds exhausting." "It is, but she makes life better, even on the days she's impossible." Ava nodded, looking down at her hands as if she was weighing something inside herself. "I don't have kids. Never thought I'd had the time or the stability for it." There was a quiet honesty in her tone, something she rarely let slip. "But sometimes I wonder what it would have been like to have a little version of life that wasn't tied to boardrooms and deadlines." Liam shifted his weight. "You're not as distant as people think," he said, before he could stop himself. He expected her to bristle at that, but she didn't. She looked up, studying him with that calm intensity that made him feel seen in a way he didn't expect from someone like her. "And you're not as invisible as you think," she replied. The words struck him with surprising force. He wasn't used to being noticed beyond his job title, not by anyone in this building, especially not by her. He cleared his throat and returned his focus to the computer. "The system crash came from corrupted startup files. I'm repairing them now. Should prevent the automatic shutdown." Ava watched him work for a moment before speaking again. "You speak plainly. People don't do that with me. They're either afraid of upsetting me or trying to impress me." Liam gave a small shrug. "I don't have the energy to pretend I'm someone I'm not. Life's too full for that."
Her expression softened in a way he hadn't seen before, as if she wanted to say something but wasn't sure she should. When the computer rebooted smoothly, Liam stepped back. Should be good now. No more surprise shutdowns. Ava nodded, but she didn't look at the computer. She looked at him, quiet and steady. Thank you. Not just for fixing it. The air between them warmed, subtle but unmistakable. Something had shifted, something small but significant, a connection neither of them had planned, built from honesty neither of them saw coming. Ava didn't return to her usual polished posture or clipped, efficient tone after he finished the repair. Instead, she lingered near the desk, arms resting loosely at her sides, as if the quiet moment between them had opened a door she wasn't ready to close. Liam felt it too, that shift from formal interaction to something more human, more curious. He started packing his tools, expecting her to dismiss him the way executives often did once their problem was solved. But she didn't. "How long have you been here?" she asked, and the question wasn't a casual one. It carried genuine interest. Liam zipped his bag and leaned one hand on the chair. "About 3 years," he said. "Got the job right after Mia started school, needed something stable." Ava nodded, absorbing his answer like she was filing it somewhere meaningful. 3 years, she repeated softly, "and I don't think we've ever spoken before today." Liam wasn't sure how to respond without sounding awkward. "Well, you're a little busy running the world," he joked lightly. Her lips curved in a faint smile. "Sometimes it feels like the world is running me," she said. The way she said it wasn't dramatic. It was honest. She motioned toward the seating area near the windows. "Sit for a minute," she said, and though he hesitated, because what employee casually sits with the CEO, there was something in her tone that made the request feel less like an order and more like an invitation. He sat across from her on a low couch, feeling strangely out of place and yet oddly welcome. Ava lowered herself into the chair opposite him, folding one leg over the other. "Tell me about your daughter," she said. The question disarmed him. Most people asked out of politeness, but she asked like she was genuinely interested. "Mia's a lot," he said with a small laugh. "She's curious about everything. Last week she took apart the remote control just to see how it worked. Didn't put it back together, of course." Ava smiled, really smiled, and the warmth in her expression surprised him. "She sounds spirited," she said. "That's one word for it," he replied. "Some days I think she's determined to give me gray hair before I turn 40. They both laughed quietly, and the sound softened the room. Ava's smile lingered for a moment before fading into something more reflective. "I envy that," she admitted. Liam tilted his head. "Envy what?" She traced a slow line along the arm of her chair. "Having someone who needs you, someone who loves you without conditions or expectations." She didn't sound sad exactly, but there was a loneliness woven into her voice that he hadn't heard before. It startled him how candid she was being. "I don't really have that," she added. "People need me, yes, but not in that way, not in a way that feels personal." Liam's chest tightened at the honesty of it. "People care about you," he said gently, "even if it's not obvious." She shook her head slightly. "Care about the CEO, maybe. Care about what I can offer them, but not me." She looked out the window, her expression distant. "That photo you saw, I was happy that day. Not because the place was beautiful, though it was. I was happy because, for once, nobody needed anything from me." Liam let her words settle before responding. "Everyone deserves that," he said. "A moment that doesn't belong to work or expectations." She looked back at him, her eyes searching his. "When was yours?" The question hit him harder than he expected. He thought about it for a moment, then shrugged lightly. "Probably the last time Mia fell asleep on my chest watching a movie. There was no noise, no responsibilities, no schedule, just her breathing and me not having to rush anywhere." Ava's expression softened with something close to longing. "That sounds grounding," she said quietly. "It is," he replied. She reminds me of what matters." Silence fell again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was calm, shared. Ava looked at him with the same quiet focus she'd shown all afternoon. "You're easy to talk to. People don't usually talk to me like this." Liam smiled faintly. "Maybe they should." She gave a small exhale, something like a laugh mixed with disbelief. "Maybe," she said. They stayed like that for another moment, just looking at each other across the quiet space, something unspoken humming between them. Finally, she stood, smoothing the fabric of her suit. "Thank you, Liam, not just for fixing the computer, for today." He gathered his bag and stood as well, feeling a warmth in his chest he hadn't expected walking into this office. As he walked to the door, she called after him, her voice softer than before. "You were right about the photo. I was happier that day." Liam turned, meeting her eyes. "Maybe you will be again." She held his gaze for a breath before he stepped out, leaving both of them with the quiet sense that something had changed, something they weren't ready to name, but couldn't ignore.
Liam didn't expect to hear from Ava again so soon, but the next morning he found an email from her assistant waiting in his inbox, asking him to return to the top floor for a follow-up meeting. No explanation, no details, just the time and a room number. His first instinct was panic. Had he crossed some invisible line? Had their conversation the day before been too personal, too open, too human? The elevator ride felt heavier this time, every floor passing with a low hum that did nothing to settle his nerves. By the time he reached her hallway, he'd rehearsed 5 different apologies in his head, none of which made him feel any better. When he stepped into her office, he found Ava standing near the seating area, not behind her desk. She looked different today, not in appearance, but in energy, less guarded, more thoughtful. She motioned for him to sit. "I hope I didn't interrupt your morning," she said. Her tone wasn't clipped or formal. It was almost careful. Liam shook his head. Not at all. He tried to read her expression, but she wasn't giving away much. She sat across from him, resting her hands lightly in her lap. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she drew in a breath, as if choosing her words mattered. "I've been thinking about something," she said quietly. "About you." The sentence caught him so off guard that he forgot how to breathe for a second. She seemed to notice his surprise and offered a faint, reassuring smile. "Not in a complicated way," she clarified. "In a professional sense, though, not entirely limited to that." Liam had no idea what that meant, but he nodded slowly, waiting. Ava continued, "You may not realize this, but people rarely tell me the truth. They rarely show me who they really are. Yesterday, you did both without trying." She paused, her gaze steady on his. "It made me realize something. I need people like that around me." Liam wasn't sure where this was going, but the sincerity in her voice kept him from interrupting. She leaned back slightly, folding her arms in a thoughtful gesture. "I'm building a small internal team," she said, "a think tank group for a confidential project. People with different strengths, different perspectives. People I can trust to give me unfiltered truth." Her eyes met his. "I want you on it." For a moment, all Liam could do was stare. "Me?" he asked, almost laughing because the idea was so unreal. "Ava, I fix computers. I don't think I'm qualified for whatever this is." She shook her head. "You're qualified in ways that matter to me. I have people with degrees, people with influence, people who know how to speak in circles. What I don't have is someone who looks at me and sees a person instead of a title." Her words hit with unexpected weight. "And before you try to turn this down," she added, "understand that I'm offering because I meant what I said yesterday. You're not invisible here, Liam. Not to me." His heart thudded in his chest at the quiet intensity of her voice. He rubbed his palms on his knees, trying to ground himself. "What exactly would I be doing?" he asked. Ava exhaled slowly, as if relieved he hadn't rejected the idea outright. "Helping me evaluate systems? Technical, yes, but also operational. Workflow issues that no one tells me because they're afraid of getting in trouble. You see things from a different angle. I need that." And she hesitated, then added softly, "I trust you."
The simplicity of the statement made something tighten in his chest. He wasn't used to being trusted by people at this level, especially not someone like her. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. She offered a gentle, almost hopeful smile. "Say yes. And if you're worried about your schedule or your daughter, we can work around that." Hearing her acknowledge Mia so naturally warmed him more than he expected. It wasn't pity, it was consideration, real consideration. He took a slow breath, letting the moment settle. "Okay," he said finally. "Yes, I'll join the project." Something in Ava's shoulders eased, as if she'd been holding tension she didn't want him to see. "Good," she said quietly. "I'm glad." For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the air between them carrying something not quite defined but undeniably present. Ava stood and extended her hand. Liam rose and shook it, her grip firm yet warm. "Welcome to the team," she said. But the way she said it didn't sound like a standard workplace greeting. It sounded like the beginning of something neither of them fully understood yet. When he left her office, the world felt slightly tilted, as if one unexpected moment had opened a path he never imagined walking. And somewhere behind him, Ava watched the door close. Her expression softened with a quiet certainty she hadn't felt in years.
The weeks that followed unfolded in a way Liam never could have predicted, and certainly not on the day he walked into Ava Carter's office expecting to fix nothing more than a malfunctioning computer. His new role on her confidential project pulled him into meetings he never thought he'd be invited to, sitting beside executives who raised their eyebrows when she introduced him, then stopped questioning it when she made it clear his presence wasn't up for debate. But what surprised him most wasn't the work itself, it was Ava. She didn't treat him like an employee dropped into the deep end. She treated him like someone whose voice mattered. She asked for his perspective, circled back when she wanted him to clarify something, and sometimes lingered after meetings just to talk about things that had nothing to do with the project. Their conversations drifted into personal territory so naturally that neither of them seemed to notice when the lines shifted. She asked about Mia often, how she was doing in school, whether her fever had come back, what she liked to draw. Whenever he talked about his daughter, Ava listened with a softness that didn't match her guarded reputation. In return, she shared pieces of her own life she admitted she rarely spoke about. Her childhood summers with her sister, her first failed business venture, the fear she felt the day she signed papers that put her in charge of thousands of employees. With each story, each quiet confession passed between them, something deeper formed, something careful and warm and incredibly fragile. One evening, long after most of the building had emptied out, they finished reviewing a set of documents in her office. The city lights glowed through the tall windows, scattering reflections across the glass table between them. Ava stretched her back and sighed, rubbing her temples. "I think that's enough for today," she said. "My brain is giving out." Liam smiled as he gathered his notes. "Pretty sure mine gave out an hour ago." She laughed softly, a sound he still wasn't used to hearing, but liked more each time it slipped out. Instead of heading to her desk or checking her phone, she walked with him toward the elevator. A small gesture, but one that felt more intimate than anything she'd said all day. They stood in the quiet hallway, the soft hum of the lights settling around them. It felt peaceful in a way the top floor seldom did. "You know," she said, glancing at him, "I never expected any of this." He raised an eyebrow gently. "Any of what?" She looked away for a moment, searching for the right words. "Working with someone who doesn't filter everything they say, someone who doesn't treat me like a headline or a position." She hesitated, then met his eyes again. "Someone who sees me." Liam didn't respond at first, not because he didn't know what to say, but because the sincerity in her voice left him momentarily still. He took a slow breath. "I don't see a CEO when I talk to you. I see a person trying to carry more than anyone should have to." Her eyes softened, and for a second she looked as though he'd said something she'd needed to hear for a long time. "You make it sound simple." "Maybe it is," he said quietly. The elevator chimed and the doors slid open, but neither of them stepped inside. Instead, they stayed there, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating off her, close enough that he realized just how much had changed between them without either of them naming it. Ava's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. "You remember what you said about that photo, about me looking peaceful?" Liam nodded. "I've been thinking about it, and I think I felt that way because, for a moment, I wasn't alone."
She swallowed lightly, her gaze steady. The strange thing is, I've been feeling that again lately. The quiet honesty in her words hit him deeper than he expected. He stepped a little closer, not touching her, but close enough that the space between them felt charged and careful. "You're not alone," he said softly. "Not anymore." She held his gaze, her expression open in a way he hadn't seen before. Not the confident CEO mask, not the collected facade, but the real version of her, the one who felt too much and hid it too well. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The elevator doors began to close, breaking the moment only because life kept moving even when they didn't want it to. She placed a hand on the doorframe, stopping it from shutting completely. "Thank you, Liam," she said, "for all of this, for being you." He smiled, warm and steady. "Any time," he said. As he stepped into the elevator, he watched her linger there, framed by the hallway light, looking both strong and vulnerable in a way that made his chest tighten. When the doors finally closed, Ava stood alone in the quiet corridor, but the feeling that settled into her chest wasn't loneliness. It was something far more hopeful, something she hadn't let herself feel in years. And she knew, with quiet certainty, that this was only the beginning of whatever was growing between them, something unexpected, something real, something that neither title nor circumstance could stop from unfolding.
If you enjoyed this emotional twist on a single dad and billionaire CEO romance, make sure to subscribe to Drew Daily Stories for more heartwarming drama, unexpected love arcs, and stories that keep you hooked from the first line to the last. Your next favorite story is waiting there.